Bradenton Kiwanis sponsored Starlight Movie Night this past Sunday night, so if any of you missed it, you missed out on a good time. We had great music from Soul Sensation and Henry Lawrence, and he's an awesome singer. I think Mac's going to try and show a video of the singing that they did. And we had some teens there that Henry talked to about making sure you go to school and making sure that you figure out what you're going to do after high school, and to think about your actions and that your actions have consequences, which is such a good thing to be sharing with our teens right now. The weather was beautiful, and of course it was Remember the Titans. So who doesn't love Remember the Titans? It's a great true story. There is going to be another movie night that's coming up on March 14th. It's Moana, which is a Disney cartoon, very kid-friendly. I think that there is going to be a hula contest. I hate bringing that up because I feel like I'm going to get talked into something. And a limbo contest, which both of those sound terrifying to me, but the kids will love it. So this is a really good one for the littles. If you have friends, please pass it out, get people to come out. It was a beautiful night, a lot of fun. We want to get more people out there for it, and it is virtual too. So Mac was doing it through FaceTime, and I think the theater was doing it Facebook Live, both of you. So Mac, do you want to show the video?
Mustang solid, yeah. I think you better slow the Mustang down.
How will I know if he really loves me? I say a prayer with every heartbeat. I'm gonna love whenever we meet. I'm asking you, 'cause you know about these things.
But all I'm saying is exercise all of your options. And, you know, I'm talking to the younger people, but then, you know, if you're a little older, you're undecided, you can still get on board. Like Dr. Morgan said, get on board. Well, I'm here to tell you, you know, it's nothing wrong with getting on board. Whether you
What's going on?
We wanted to let you know we was going to warm up a little different tonight.
We are the Tigers.
Janina Amick film, look at that!
Written like
Oh well.
Mac he's got such a good sense of humor. We did have a lot of fun on Sunday night, and I hope more people do come out for the March 14th one. I think the little kids will enjoy it, and we're going to keep doing them. I think it's like one a month or one every couple weeks.
One a month.
And it is free to the public, but it is also free to our members. So I hope to see many of you come out. Now, if you're a club member, there is a possibility that you might get pulled off to go put a costume on. I heard something about that too. I think Neil ended up having to put a costume on at some point. Passing out popcorn. So she tends to recruit people. Just, you know, PSA, little warning before you go.
How do you sign up for it?
You don't. It's open to the public. You don't have to sign up. You just show up. And I would say get there a little early because you can't park on the side. Bring your chairs, bring a picnic. Dominic and I went. We just hung out and ate, you know, some sandwiches. And, you know, I got a desperate phone call that said, "Can you bring me a sandwich?" And I didn't. No, but I bring some food. It's a great night out, and it's late enough in the evening that it's cool out and it's still nice. So anybody can go.
So no cars. It's not like.
Well, the cars can come in and park, but you can also park on the side and put your chairs out in front and just, you know, sit. We socially distance, and we try to behave. And the next thing is we have the President's Contest that we pulled a winner. And Sharon Barhorse was the winner of the contest. She is getting to donate $2,000 out of my budget to a charity of her choice. So I'm going to let her come up here and share the charity with you guys.
Well, this was a hard decision. I would like to select Manatee Performing Arts Center, also known as Florida Cultural Group, as my charity of choice. Last year, during the pandemic, I had an opportunity to do a behind-the-scenes tour of what actually goes on in this building that we eat lunch at every single day. And as part of that, I learned so much about just the impact of the Art Center here in our community. In fact, I'm going to pull some statistics, especially what's happened from COVID. The arts have lost $210 million in admissions due to canceled events, resulting in a $6.7 billion loss in event-related spending by audiences. Despite these huge revenue losses, 76% of arts organizations and 68% of artists have been using the arts to strengthen community cohesion, raise morale, and lighten the COVID-19 experiences of our community. And based on that, I've never really, I'll be perfectly honest, I never really thought of Manatee Performing Arts Centers as a charity of choice for my husband and I. But after going through the behind-the-scenes tour and really thinking about all the things we see here at Manatee Performing Arts Center that Janine does, we decided last year to donate money to Performing Arts Center, and we're going to continue to donate money because it really does make a huge difference in our community. And I mean, you see all the different things they do. I don't know if any of you saw some of the plays like pre-COVID where they had nonprofits come in, tell important things about their mission, hand out materials. That's very rare for a nonprofit to really allow other nonprofits to come into their facility and make a difference. And I credit, Janine with that. You're amazing. I mean, you truly are. I've worked with a lot of different nonprofits, and I've never seen CEOs share. That's just not usually in their DNA. So again, thank you for everything you do. And I'm very proud to be able to spend somebody else's money and also add my money to it.
Smile.
Thank you. Did you spell it right?
You didn't sign it.
Oh well, it goes out the window.
I don't like signing blank checks.
Especially if they're to me.
Especially if they're to you. So, fix that. All right. So, now you kind of have an idea of how the contest is going to work. Mac started last Wednesday putting more names in the bucket. I will say this, Sharon, I really appreciate you coming up and sharing some thoughtful statistics about the arts in general, because they really have been affected. And every time, I have a very good friend who taught me this, every time someone tells you that arts isn't important, think about how you learned the ABCs. Every single one of us sang the ABCs. It is a big part of learning. Little kids sing to learn, and they act things out to learn. That's how they learn about empathy and emotion. So the arts is a big deal. It's affected Dominic, and he's gone through all of the camps here. It's helped him to speak in front of people.
Are you going to sing it for us?
No. I'm not singing.
Come on.
But yes, so thank you very much, Sharon. And the contest goes on. We have another month. So make sure you're participating and you're coming. And Mac will put your name in the bucket. And Mac and I made an executive decision, or he threw it out there. So if you win, you don't get your name in the bucket anymore. Right? So that gives some more chances to other people to be able to win. Okay, with that, I'm going to invite Neil to come up.
So we'll go into history, giving Gilbert a chance to rest his voice, as he has provided us lots of good history over time. And we're going to be doing 1952 today. Our first slide. This is an aerial view of the Manatee River from south of DeSoto Bridge in 52. If you can look at the coastline between the DeSoto Bridge and the Green Bridge, who knew that a riverboat docked there and transported people to the islands to Tampa and St. Pete? So we have a few in the audience that knew that. There's also a power plant closer to Bradenton at this time. Next slide. This is actually a scene on a postcard, seen from the entrance of Bradenton from Green Bridge on 10th Street. That's the Manatee River Hotel in the foreground. Next slide. This is a slide of Judge George Hitchcock. On January 3, 1952, the club held Ladies' Night, an installation dinner at the Bradenton Country Club. Very impressive that the president of Kiwanis International, Claude Hellman, swore in Manatee County Judge George Hitchcock as the 1952 president, along with the other elected officers and directors. President Hitchcock became the first sitting judge to serve as president of the club and continued the club's influence in the community. George was born on January 19, 1900 in Jacksonville, Florida, graduated with his bachelor's and Juris Doctor degrees from the University of Florida in 1924. He moved to Bradenton and opened an office on Main Street, where he developed a specialty in civil trials. George also became the prosecuting attorney for Manatee County from 1933 until 1950. Then in 1950, he had the opportunity to run for judge. He was elected and would be re-elected in 1952 for a 4-year term. He was a popular judge with court personnel, the lawyers, and the public. Unfortunately, he had to retire on July 6, 1955 due to poor health. After a year of rest, he returned to practice law with the firm of Dye & Dye until he retired again in 1976. Besides being a devoted husband, father, and judge, Judge Hitchcock believed in volunteering in the community. He served on many boards and was a member of the First Baptist Church. Judge Hitchcock was also a member of the Manatee County Bar Association and eventually served as its president in 1952. Interesting that he served both as presidents of the Bar Association as well as the club in 1 year. Quite a task. After practicing law for over 55 years and serving his community, Judge Hitchcock died on February 16, 1980 at 80 years old. This is what Judge Hitchcock looked when I met him. He was with my dad's old firm, the Dye firm. Is anybody getting this? I didn't write this. I'm not Gilbert. That's the firm Steve is with, which was established by his grandfather and continued by his father. Next slide. This is a book, Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge. Here comes some more stuff. Judge Hitchcock was my counselor and made good impression on me. Not me. I was a scout, but not this scout. He was kind and not too stern for a 14-year-old scout. It's funny, however, people come back into your life, or Gilbert's life, especially studying history. The Bradenton Trailer Park continued to be successful with the rising popularity of trailer park living. The demographics of the residents of the park is now mostly retirees with sufficient income to live at the park. Next slide. This is a front cover of the Saturday Evening Post showing the Bradenton Trailer Park. The popularity of the trailer park is depicted on this cover in February of 1952. Next slide. This is the front page of the Bradenton Herald on January 30, 1952. It features an article on the front page about how the picture and the story in the Saturday Evening Post provided publicity to the city of Bradenton and the Bradenton Trailer Park. Of course, the article also demonstrated the influence of the club in making the park a success for Manatee County. Now everyone in America is reminded of Bradenton Kiwanis' success and influence. We have a front page of the Bradenton Herald on June 2, 1952. On June 1, 1952, the Manatee County Boys Club new gymnasium was dedicated with many members of the club in attendance. Over 400 people attended the ceremony, which included Ed Price serving as Master of Ceremonies and Judge Hitchcock presiding over the dedication. The story of the dedication appeared on the front page and emphasized that the Boys Club would now be able to provide facilities and programs for more boys. Everyone in Manatee County is well aware that the club is dedicated to changing the world one child and one community at a time. We'll see you in 2 weeks for 1953. Okay, and now we'll introduce our speaker for today. Steve Frederico is a private investigator and motivational speaker who served in law enforcement for over 20 years in Rochester, New York. As a young man, he joined the Marine Corps and was stationed overseas when he survived the infamous Beirut Barracks bombing of 1983, where 241 military personnel were killed by a suicide bomber. A decorated Marine, he will be sharing his compelling story about Beirut and the core values of the Marine Corps. Steve's familiar with our Bradenton Kiwanis since he's been on Zoom with Grace Ann, watching many programs. Grace Ann, again, is the Executive Director of Manatee County Bar Association, who's attended many meetings in person. At this time, would you give a warm Bradenton Kiwanis welcome to Steve Frederico.
Can everybody see me all right out in Zoom land? Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, all right. First question I have, do we have any former Marines in the house today? Do we have any former Marines that are listening in? We don't. We have any former law enforcement? We don't. Okay, you're very intelligent. Oh, you got one? All right. All right, I was going to say, very intelligent group. You avoided two very dangerous trades.
Oh, Lee Washington. Lee Washington is on Zoom and he said, Semper Fi.
All right, Semper Fi. All right, we got one jarhead. Okay, that's good. Where there's one jarhead, there's an army, trust me. It's been almost 40 years, 38 years exactly, since I was over in Beirut, Lebanon. And to be perfectly honest with you, I have not talked about Beirut. I have not been asked to speak about Beirut. I really had no desire to talk about Beirut, Lebanon. Don't get me wrong. I'm a firm believer that as an American and as an American citizen, that, well, first of all, I volunteered to go in the Marine Corps. I was not drafted. But I firmly believe that if your country requires you to perform a duty for them, and it requires you to go overseas and perhaps be in combat, you're obligated as an American citizen to do that, whether you agree with what's going on or not. Even though I can tell you, 38 years later, our mission in Beirut, Lebanon, I think was flawed. The way we handled it, I think was flawed. And quite frankly, that's why the barracks got blown up in October of 1983. As I said before, I have not spoken about Beirut, and it's a very funny thing because maybe about 3 weeks or a month ago, I got a phone call. And the person on the other end of the line said, "You know who this is?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "Steve, this is Mike Zawicki." And I said, "I don't know any Mike Zawickis." And he says, "Sure you do. You remember the day you came home from Beirut and that Marine walked up to you in the airport?" And he said, "You know, me and you are the only two that are left alive from Rochester, New York." And I spoke to him very briefly. I said, "Look, I want to get with my family. We'll talk later. Give me your number, give me your name, we'll talk." It never happened. And that guy faded from my memory, and I lost track of him. And suddenly, somehow, he found me after 38 years. And so we began to talk, and of course, we began to talk about Beirut, Lebanon, and a lot of things got recalled, and a lot of them I didn't really want to recall, but it's kind of difficult to talk about still. But then this opportunity came up to once again speak about being in Beirut, Lebanon. and another opportunity I had on Zoom to speak about Beirut, Lebanon. So I thought, you know, it might be a good thing because I'm really not sure how much people really know about this so-called peacekeeping mission that went on in Beirut. I think some people, if you ask them, hey, what do you know about Beirut and when the Marines were over there? They might be able to tell you, oh, that's where the building got blown up, right? But if you were to ask them anything beyond that, they couldn't really tell you anything about it. Or they couldn't tell you anything at all about the Marines being in Beirut, Lebanon. So today, I'm not just going to stand up here and tell you war stories, but hopefully I'm going to educate you a little bit about what we were doing in Beirut, Lebanon back in 1983. And I'm going to really start this story, the beginning, I'm going to start it with the end. My unit was on a rooftop, and we were trying to defend our position. We kind of got trapped. We were in another nighttime firefight. And the enemy obviously had been tracking us, which really wasn't a hard thing to do because they were up in the hills and we were down in a valley. So it was very easy. They had the high ground. It was very easy for them to monitor us, to watch us. They could see where we were moving. Well, if you ask me who's the enemy, I honestly couldn't tell you. It could have been the Islamic Jihad. It could have been the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It could have been the Amal militia. It could have been the Hamas. It could have been Hezbollah. These groups, they really weren't armies. They were more like street gangs who had possession of weapons, automatic weapons, rocket launchers, but they really weren't armies. They weren't official armies. They were more like gangs. And so we were pinned down, and we knew they were advancing. Suddenly, I know in the movies, I'm sure you've all seen where people are in combat, and you'll hear this whistling noise, and it's the sound of a bomb going overhead. When you hear that whistling noise, you have nothing to worry about, because the bomb is actually traveling over you. When you hear a very brief whistling noise, that's when you're in trouble. You're going to get hit. They got you on target. Now, I was on the roof along with my unit, and I heard that brief whistling noise, and I knew we were going to get hit. The rocket, I was lying down behind some sandbags. The rocket went over the top of me. It hit the wall behind me, and when it hit the wall behind me, that's when it blew apart to throw the shrapnel all over the place. And it literally sounded like somebody firing a machine gun. I felt fire in the back of my legs right away, and I knew I'd been hit. So I started yelling out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." And I started to lose consciousness. And the last thing I remember was hearing my fellow Marines screaming. And I figured they were all dying too. Somebody had told me one time that when you're dying, the last thing that you're going to hear, the last thing you're going to lose is your hearing. Now, I don't know if that's really true, but that's the last thing before everything went black. And I thought to myself, I'm 18 years old, and I'm going to die on a peacekeeping mission. The reason I say peacekeeping mission, it's when I learned the power of the media. We were, very early on, we were involved in combat over there, but the world never knew. My own parents, who I wrote home to, I asked them, send some care packages, because our supplies are not getting through, because a lot of times, because of the fighting, we're not getting our MREs, our food. So if you could mail a care package of canned goods, that would be very helpful. My parents wrote back to me, what are you talking about? We're watching the news. We're reading the paper. There's no fighting over there. You're on a peacekeeping mission. And I thought to myself, man, talk about the power of the media. I'm over there, and I'm telling you what's going on. but you actually believe the television and you believe the newspaper over me. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit now and tell you how it all started for me. I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1982. I was a senior in high school, and I really wasn't cut out for college. I wasn't cut out for high school either. I wasn't doing very well there. And so I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. And I can remember a funny story. I sat down with my recruiter, and at one point I looked at him and I said, look, I got to ask you a question. I said, is it true? I go, do they really beat the recruits in boot camp? And he looks at me and he says, no, they don't do that anymore. He goes, well, no. He says, I gotta be honest with you. He says, there is one battalion, 3rd Battalion I Company. They're way out in the swamps, and that's considered old Corps. Nobody keeps an eye on them. So yes, they do hand out beatings out there. He goes, but what's the likelihood of you ending up in that battalion out of all, you know where I'm going with this. Out of all the battalions and all what's the likelihood of you ending up there? Guess what? I ended up there. And so yeah, it was old Corps. And back then, I do have to be honest with you, beatings were handed out for the smallest things. And I can remember many of our recruits in our platoon receiving training injuries. And they left in the back of an ambulance, and I never saw them again. After graduation, I went to Camp Lejeune for further training, and it wasn't long after that I found out we were going to be deployed to Beirut, Lebanon. And we were going to be a part of this thing called a multinational peacekeeping force, which we would be doing with the French, we would be doing with the British, and some other units. And when I arrived in Beirut, it was quiet. There was no fighting going on. There was nothing going on. But you could look around and see there was a serious war going on. Not one building didn't have bullet holes in it. And I never saw anything like it. It literally, as you approached Beirut from the water, it looked like New York City. That's how built up it was. And at first I'm going, wow, look at this. This looks like New York. It's a huge city. And then the closer I got, I saw every single building from top to bottom filled with bullet holes. I said, well, obviously something serious has been going on here for quite a while for this kind of damage. I'll never forget talking to a civilian there. And I looked at him one time and I go, how do you guys live with it? How do you live with this? And he looked at me and he said, we've gotten used to it. And then he says to me, just like you will. And I said, excuse me? And he goes, oh, this isn't just for us. He says, this is coming to you. You're going to experience this. I said, you're out of your mind. If you ever think people are going to drive vehicles with bombs in them into American buildings, you're crazy. And he said, you remember this. Jihad, which is holy war, is global. This is the practice area. This is the training area. Jihad must be global, and it will come to you. And I'll never forget on 9/11, that guy's voice came back to me. I remembered those words. When those 2 planes went into those 2 buildings, I said, Jihad has come to America. But in the beginning, like I said, it was quiet. We stood on posts. We were really nothing more than glorified security guards. Our weapons were not loaded. I used to go up and play baseball. We'd go up and play baseball at the American University of Lebanon. And it was a pretty good life. But I'll never forget one night, we were standing on a post, and from our post, we could, with our binoculars, our night vision goggles, we could see what was known as the Bekaa Valley, or the Shuf as it was referred to. And it looked like a caravan was going out of there. And as we looked, my guy that I was on post with said, what's going on? And I said, it looks like the Israeli army is pulling out of the Bekaa Valley. And he said to me, well, what do you think that means? And I said, I think what it means is tomorrow things are going to be a whole lot different than they are right now. I should have been a bad luck fortune teller. A guy that specializes in only predicting with 100% accuracy bad luck, because I'd have made a fortune. Sure enough, next thing in the morning, we were introduced to what's known as the RPG, the rocket-propelled grenade. The enemy liked to travel around in the hills, and they had portable rocket launchers in the back of their pickup trucks, in the beds of their pickup trucks. And they would just arbitrarily fire rockets at us for fun. They used to like to see us scramble. It almost reminded me of like when you're a little kid and there's ants on the ground, and you keep putting your foot down near the ant to make it run one way, and then you put your foot down to make it run the other way. That's literally what they would do to us. They would walk the rounds in towards where our bunkers were until they got close enough where they knew we had to run because the next round was going to hit us. And as we ran into another direction and dived into a foxhole or wherever we could find cover, they would start walking the rounds in over there so that we'd have to get up and run someplace else. It was the most frustrating, stressful thing, I'll tell you, that I ever had to go through. Generally, the only way it came to an end is when an artillery strike would be called in, and then all of a sudden, the rocket launchers, you wouldn't hear them anymore because they didn't exist anymore. Well, things began to intensify over the summer, and as fall approached, we started to hear rumors that Hezbollah was planning a bombing. They were planning an attack on battalion headquarters. We assumed, now we got this information from the Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, so we considered it to be very reliable. I would like to say this right now. If a bunch of schmucks over in Beirut, Lebanon, meaning me, had information from the Mossad about a bombing that was going to occur on battalion headquarters, are you going to tell me that the President of the United States at the time didn't know there was going to be a bombing? But it happened anyways. Well, the Hezbollah had an intelligence source working within us. And the intelligence source was a man that we all knew. He was this elderly, friendly, old guy who all he was known as to all of us was Shuffles. Shuffles was a little old man who had a little cart that he sold chocolates from and other sweets. And Shuffles would even develop your film for you, since there were no moto photos over in Beirut, Lebanon for us to go develop our film. And I used to warn the Marines, do not give him your film. You don't know who this guy is. We don't even know what this guy's name really is, but nonetheless, people did it. To make matters even worse, the Marines gave Shuffles a room to stay in inside of battalion. So he was actually inside battalion headquarters, and there you have a picture of battalion headquarters right there before it got blown up. Outside is the perimeter, Airport Road as it was called. The truck bomb was actually on the outer perimeter circling. And I'll tell you a little why nobody went after this truck. Nobody thought this was unusual. And then it came in through what was nothing more than a roll of barbed wire. That was the only thing to stop a vehicle. Because, again, they told the guards up at battalion, don't load your weapons. You're not to have your weapons loaded. But anyway, Shuffles lived inside of battalion headquarters. And he was gathering, he had a treasure trove of information. He was getting pictures of the interior of the building. He was getting pictures of the exterior of the building. Now, one of the routines that occurred at battalion headquarters was a thing called Sunday Cookout, where they would have this truck come. Two Lebanese gentlemen drove the truck, and they would deliver hot dog rolls, hamburger buns, watermelon, water, other things for our Sunday cookout. I was never there for the Sunday cookout. I was only there one weekend, but the guys who were actually stationed in that building, they had Sunday cookout every Sunday. But one Sunday, and it just happened to be the Sunday before the bombers blew the building up, I was there. And I was there when this truck rolled up with these two Lebanese guys who immediately asked one of the Marine sentries, "Where are all the Marines? I don't see any Marines." And this Marine who was standing guard said, "Oh, they all sleep in on Sunday. Nobody's up right now." And after the guy drove away, I said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing telling this guy, or these two guys, what our routine is? Why would you tell him something like that?" And he laughs it off and he says, "Those guys are all right. They deliver the hot dog rolls. They're here every Sunday. Those guys are harmless." Well, you know what? The following Sunday, that delivery truck showed up. But it wasn't carrying hot dog rolls and hamburger rolls, watermelon or water. It was carrying 21,000 pounds of TNT. 21,000 pounds. And coincidentally, Shuffles had left several days earlier because he was going on a vacation to visit his family in the mountains. Now, I recently heard a different story. I heard that Shuffles was still in the building and that Hezbollah blew him up intentionally because in the event he was to be apprehended, he was an old man and they feared that he would fess up and give names and information like that. I don't know. I heard both stories. I don't know which one is true. All I know is this. Shuffles was an old man. So that was almost 40 years ago. He'd either be dead from old age or he was killed when the building blew up. Either way, he's dead, and that suits me just fine. It was later confirmed that Shuffles was working with Hezbollah. He was providing them with information, and guess what? A treasure trove of photographs, all of which were taken by United States Marines, not by Shuffles. But he simply had possession of copies of those pictures because they foolishly gave him film from their cameras, which he went and developed, and then anything that he felt had intelligence value, he turned it over to Hezbollah. Well, the morning that the bomb went off, I was in another building approximately 2 miles away. The intensity of the explosion was so severe that I was knocked out of my rack and onto the floor. I thought we got hit. And just as I was getting up off the floor, somebody ran into our building and screamed, "Battalion's been hit! Battalion's been hit!" And as we ran outside, we saw a mushroom cloud that looked like when an atomic bomb is set off, and I think we have a picture of that, of literally what we saw, that right there. That's what I saw when I came out of my building. It literally looked like an A-bomb had just gone off. So we obviously all pile into vehicles, jeeps, trucks, whatever, head down to Battalion. Well, it was surreal. I mean, there were bodies hanging from trees that were still in their sleeping bags. There were heads, body parts just laying in the road. And the Marines trapped, alive still in the rubble, screaming for us to get them out of there. And some guys we did get out, and other guys we didn't get out. And so they were literally buried alive and they suffocated to death in there. While we're in the midst of dealing with all this carnage, there's locals there with cameras, taking pictures, enjoying themselves, obviously. This photograph was not taken by a local. They were actually taking photographs of the dead bodies. Like if they saw a Marine with his head missing or something, they were taking pictures of that. And then I found out later they were actually attempting to sell them back to us. I don't know where their heads were at, but it was really strange. But that's a look at what you got there. It was a long day. We were doing our best. We were running on pure adrenaline. At some point in time, a photographer, I was told, he was from Stars and Stripes magazine, wanted to take a picture. And I think we have the picture. That's me. Look, it's a staged photograph. He said, just turn around and look at the building, which is probably a good thing because I was very disgusted with what was going on. And he took this photograph. here. And it's just, like I said, it was a very long day. I won't go into it any more than that. But when night fell, you see, Hezbollah wasn't stupid. They knew that most of our ammunition and our supplies were in that building. So this was the night to start a fight, because they figured we didn't have a lot of ammo and we wouldn't last. And so we get trapped on this rooftop, which is where I started the story. So we're up there on that rooftop, and overhead comes this rocket-propelled grenade. And it hits the wall behind us, and like I said, I feel fire in the back of my legs, and I'm shouting, I'm hit, I'm hit. And as I'm losing consciousness, like I said before, the last thing I hear is my brothers screaming. So I'm assuming they must have got hit too. I lose consciousness. The strangest thing, at some point, it felt like I was awake, but everything was black. I couldn't see anything, I couldn't hear anything. And I truly thought that I was dead and that I was in hell. Because I thought to myself, if I was dead and I was in heaven, well, I'd be with God. This is darkness, and I'm scared. And I reach out with my hand, and I feel something, material. I grab a hold of it and pull on it, and it was my poncho. Somebody had covered me with my poncho. And as I pull my poncho down, it's daytime. The sun's shining, the birds are singing. I look around, we're not on the roof anymore. We're down on the ground by the side of the building. All of my fellow Marines are sleeping. None of them appear to be hurt. So now I'm thinking, did I dream this whole thing? So I walk back up to the top of the roof. The floor was completely covered with shrapnel. Where I was laying was covered completely with shrapnel. Now I'm standing there dumbfounded, when all of a sudden another Marine who was up there with me comes upstairs, and I turn around and I looked at him, and I go, I'm looking at the floor, and I look at him, and I go, what the hell happened? And I remember he just looked at me, and he goes, we won. We won. And I thought, man, what a thing. I don't know how we won, because obviously something happened to me somewhere along the line. I don't know what. I don't know. I tell you today, I swore I was hit. My legs were on fire. I lost consciousness. That whole floor was covered with shrapnel. They all should have been dead or tore up. Nobody had a scratch on them. And we won. So, I tell you the stories, and I tell you a little bit about Beirut, Lebanon, and what went on over there. There was a whole lot more that went on. And not so much to come out here today and entertain you with war stories, but like I said before, to maybe educate you a little bit. I don't really know how much people know about Beirut, Lebanon. I don't really know how much people know about the so-called peacekeeping mission that went on over there. The peace didn't last for very long. It only lasted for about a month and a half, and then everything went to crap. Hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully, I gave you some information that you didn't have before. And as I said before, I don't say peacekeeping mission because I'm bitter about what happened over there. Again, I did what I did because that's what my country told me to do. And I enlisted. I wasn't drafted. I enlisted. I felt it was my duty to do what I was called to do. Right, wrong, or indifferent. But again, 38 years later, yes, I can tell you that I believe the mission was flawed. I think there's a lot of things that we did wrong over there. And I do believe that because of the way we conducted our mission over there, that's why that building isn't standing anymore. That's why 241 Marines are dead today. Not because I understand the terrorists carried out the attack, But I think if we did things a little bit better and did things the way they should have been done, the terrorists would have never attacked or never been able to attack that building and kill 241 Marines. And so, with that, I conclude. I hope you enjoyed my little speech today. I'm sorry that at certain points I get choked up. It's still a little difficult for me to talk about because, like I said, for 38 years, I haven't discussed it and I've had no desire to discuss it. But lately things have seemed to come up where it's almost as though I'm compelled to talk about it. Maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. But I appreciate you asking me to come out today. I hope you enjoyed it, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Angel?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So, in the Kiwanis tradition, that's what I want. This is a golden ruler. As we measure things, I'm not going to hit you with it. I'm not going to. This is we measure by the golden rule. Do unto others as you do unto you. So this is a ruler from us for you to measure your future success, and we gratefully thank you for your service.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.